Peter's first book was called How Not to Speak of God. And I read it a while ago and had this I would love to have a meal with him. So I found somebody who knew somebody who said they might have an email. And I emailed and said, Dear Peter, my name is Rob. I'm a pastor in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And could I buy you lunch sometime? And he said, yes. And I was like, great, now all I have to do is go to Belfast. So I went there and got off the train station, and we found, I knew who you were because of the picture on your book, and we just started talking and ended up, I think we talked for 2 days straight.
Yeah.
So in talking, just there were all of these things where I was like, oh my word, the things that he is thinking in our conversation, there is so much here about the sermon and communication and church, you name it. But there's a couple specific things that when we were putting this together, I thought if Peter would be around, it would be just great. So maybe the first thing, Pete and his friends, who I got to have a meal with, a bunch of the Icon folks, have a thing they do on Sunday nights once a month called Icon. And it's not, it doesn't have any sort of church label or anything. It's something else. And sometimes I think when you see something, sometimes I feel like you're seeing something that the implications of it only later people are going to be able to unpack. And sometimes what happens is you see something and you don't quite know what to call it, but you know that within it, it has seeds of something that are going to grow, and someday we're all going to be talking about that. Does that make sense? And so one of the things I want Pete to do is just tell us a bit about there really isn't a typical or average Icon Sunday night, but give us a couple examples of things you all have done, just to give them a kind of a tangible sense of what you guys do.
We've got 5 coordinates. Icon is iconic, apocalyptic, heretical, emerging, and feeling. And each of these
What's the last one?
Feeling.
Okay.
No, feeling. It's the
Feeling.
accent, feeling, to feel.
Okay.
Yeah. They don't understand a word I'm saying, do they?
No.
They're just nodding. Yeah.
Now you know how I feel.
Yeah, that's, I know. You get 2 talks for the price of 1 when I'm speaking. I talk so fast, so there you go. What was I saying? Yes, so 5 coordinates. So in Icon, you go in, and it's not a back room of a bar or anything like that, it's the bar. It's while people are drinking, and most people are there for Icon. There's sometimes heckling and all of that. And we engage in what we call Transformance art. And Transformance art is designed to facilitate a rupture, a provocation, and a transformation in all who participate. Can I start talking about that stuff, actually? Or should I say what an icon looks like?
Tell them the apocalyptic night.
Oh, yeah.
Just give an idea of what happened that night.
Well, there's an example. Every icon's different, but we did one on the Second Coming, and we're always running late. It's always a bit crazy. So we had everybody waiting outside while we were kind of setting up. We did this in America, by the way, and we were setting up. We had a very well-known musician coming along to take part, and a well-known speaker, and we went outside and said, listen, we're just setting up. We're waiting for someone to arrive. We'll be starting in 5 minutes. So everyone was waiting, And eventually we opened the doors up, and people came in and they sat down. We had to say, we're still setting up. We're still waiting for someone here, but we'll start in 10 minutes. There's some visuals going, some DJs playing, Then after another 5 minutes, the musician gets up and does a sound check, and then sits back down. And we get up and we say, oh, listen, really sorry, we're still waiting for someone. We'll be starting in 5 minutes here. We'll be starting soon. And someone puts their hand up and says, well, while we're waiting, can I tell a story? Say, yeah, fair enough. So they come up and they tell the story of how the Messiah returns. And some disciples recognize the Messiah, run up and fall at his feet, weeping. And then one of them looks up to the Messiah and says, I have waited all my life for you to arrive. I've waited all my life for you to come. I have one question that I've always wanted to ask you. And the Messiah says, what's your question? And so the disciple says, tell me, Messiah, when will you come? When will you come? And I'll explain what that means tomorrow. And then somebody else got up and they said, while we're waiting, can I tell a story? And they told a story about waiting as well. By the way, your beloved in their presence is always to come. Every person is like the TARDIS in Doctor Who. I know that Doctor Who, you don't get that here, right? Well, some of you do. Basically, Doctor Who is this guy who travels around through space and time in a telephone box. Yeah, a little bit weird. And the thing about the telephone box is it's tiny. But when you open up the doors, it just goes on forever, infinitely huge, right? So on the outside, it's just this little box, and the inside is infinitely huge, which is a wonderful, wonderful analogy, is it not, of human subjectivity. This fragile, freshly framed, this small, fragile frame that I am, opens up to an inner world of infinite proportions. Every person is a universe. And when the person arrives, they arrive as that which is still to come, the not yet in the now, which is what eschatology means. Not the incoming of something that's in the future, the incoming in the future into the now. So where was I? So then we say, we're still waiting for someone to arrive, really, really sorry. And of course, people start to pick up on the fact that the gathering not happening is the gathering. We're still waiting for someone to arrive, and it's about the second coming. We're still waiting for someone to arrive, they still haven't arrived. And so we did the whole gathering, all 45 minutes, and the musician said, it's the first gig I've ever played where the person asked me not to do anything, you know? The sound check was my gig, and the speaker were like, they're just sitting there going, so I don't have to say anything. So in other words, you're trying to get people to experience something. You know? So another one we did was called the God Delusion. We did this in a festival. You walk in, we had this 18-foot woman standing in the middle of people. They're very hard to find. She was on step ladders, and we created this woolen dress that stretched right down to the ground. And then we had these pieces of wool stretching across the auditorium to people who were knitting new clothes out of the unraveling of this great piece of clothing. And we all wore unraveling clothing. So as you walked in, all of this, and some of the unraveled clothing, we did this in the bar as well, was going over to people knitting new clothes. We had the Apostles' Creed on the screens, and people could go up and they could write in what they want to put in, and they could take out what they wanted to take out throughout the gathering. And it was on track change, so you could see all the changes people were making. You know, if I have two coats, I believe that I should give one away. Putting that in, and engaging critically with the tradition. Some people being angry with it, some people loving it, some people deleting the deletions, re-editing the re-edits. All of this kind of going on, and fundamentalism. I'll tell you this last one, and then we'll move on. Fundamentalism. We did a festival, and there are actually protesters outside with signs, and people handing out tracts against what we were doing. You know, Icon is heretical, which ironically we are, it won't be so cool when you're burning in the hell type stuff. You know, so as people were queuing, they were being confronted with this shouting and screaming. Even the festival organizers were saying, we're going to have to call the police and get rid of these guys. This is really, really bad. We're about to start this gathering, and these guys are so disruptive. But of course, they were our guys, right? And some people wanted to join them as well. Some people went, oh yeah, can we join? Because Icon are really dodgy. So they joined in the ironic protest. So we said to the organizers, yeah, call the police, get rid of those guys. I don't know who they are, you know. And the point being, so as soon as you walk in, before you're even in the room, you're experiencing something of what the gathering's about. And then when you enter the room, there are pages of the Bible strewn up like rocks lying everywhere. There's on one screen people putting stuff into a Bible, someone writing stuff into a Bible. On another screen, somebody taking stuff out of a Bible. And then during the gathering, a variety of things happened. The ritual that night was we wrote our beliefs on rice paper and we passed them around for others to consume. We had this girl stood up, and she didn't say anything, like she was nervous in front of so many people. And for about 2 minutes didn't say anything, and then stood back down off a soapbox, and it said, women should remain silent in church, came up on the big screen. Then this other woman got up, and she gave this beautiful 3-minute sermon called The Singing Ministry of Christ. Absolutely stunning. And when she finished, we heard the words said again, but they actually were the words of Ian Paisley. Ian Paisley is like this fundamentalist preacher, like your Pat Robinson or something. So it would be the equivalent of Jerry Falwell, I don't know whoever. His words. And so this person, he's a fundamentalist who everybody hates. You realize, oh, it was his sermon. And she was just echoing his words. And this image comes up. And various things like this. And now you'll ask me, what does it mean? I have no idea what it means. No idea what it means. You know? And that's the issue.